Hello and welcome to Green Horizons, a new frontier. I am Andries Meton. Today we are going to talk about the significance of soil. It is so important. We stand on it. We see the fruit we reap from it. Despite very little rain we've received so far this season, we are going to talk about soil preparation. Let's take a look.
Across the width of Namibia, vegetables grow on different plates, but ultimately all of those come from the soil. Soil preparation is thus very important and provides the groundwork for all plants that need to be planted. At farm Okatambaka in the Summerdown district, before the rain has even come, you find a lush green world with an impressive irrigation system. The key here, according to owner Okatambaka, lies in the preparation.
This is a main thing to grow your maize in. This is a main soil preparation is the most important thing between rain. Rain is the whole important thing, but to prepare your ground before you plant, it must be nice soil, it must be fine soil. So for the maize plant to go through the soil and to going for the year into the soil, it must be the preparation before the maize is very important.
Stein believes that the most important thing in a planting field is to win the fight against weeds.
The thing is to dig your ground, maybe with a spit or anything like that, and to prepare your ground that there's no onkruid, there's no weed, there's no weed. Before you plant, your ground must be clean without weed, because weed is the most dangerous thing for any plants, to take the water from your plant and to take all the fertilizer and, from your plant. So the best thing is to make your ground nice without weed.
Stein's irrigation project before the rainy season takes about 45,000 liters of water over a 15-hectare field. In total, farm Okatambaka plants around 250 hectares of maize and other crops which are earmarked for Namib mills and Meatco. In one of the fields, a tractor turns the soil, but with the old maize stumps being used as well. This looks like a very untidy process, but according to Stein, all components are very important.
First of all, you must prepare your ground for the maize. So that's why we're putting in the old maize into the ground for compost. If it is growing into the ground and the rain is coming through it, then it will depends on it will going to compost. So it helps your ground to make your ground loose, and you haven't to use as much as fertilizer as maybe if there is not compost in your ground.
Another preparatory means used at farm Okatambaka is chicken manure. These heaps of chicken manure were being disposed of at the chicken factory in Windhoek, and Stein saw this as an opportunity and transported them to the farm to use as fertilizer. Here there are machinery to spread them across the hundreds of hectares, but for the small-scale farmer, this can be done using a spade. Chicken manure fertilizer is very high in nitrogen and also contains a good amount of potassium and phosphorus. The high nitrogen and balanced nutrients are the reason that chicken manure compost is the best kind of manure to use. But the high nitrogen in chicken manure is dangerous to plants if the manure has not been properly composted. These maize crops will thrive despite being irrigated because the preparation was done adequately. But farm Okatambaka borders the Ochinene communal areas, and here it is a different story. According to Agricultural Extension Officer Marcel Mise, most communal farmers do not even prepare their planting field before planting.
The culture that is in our farmers is they are not preparing their soils at all. Most of them, I can say 95% of the farmers, the time they are cultivating their soil is the time they are seeding also, or they are planting. There are no proper soil preparation, but through interventions of the office, that the proper cropping system, or the way that we have to do cropping, is first to cultivate, and then thereafter we have to seed or to plant the seed after cultivation. But most of them, because most of the farmers used to go behind the plow.
Misa says another dilemma faced by farmers is not having a sufficient planter, as planting the depth of the seed is crucial to its germinating and then blossoming. According to him, most farmers sow their seed too deep to give them a chance to germinate quickly enough to blossom.
As I have mentioned earlier, that we are only having one tractor. To those where the tractors cannot reach or cannot receive that tractor services, we advise them to use the stick, and the method that we are using, the depth of the seed should be, we are not using measurements because most of our farmers, they are illiterate at all, but we are using like something like fingers, whatever. The depth, the ideal depth of the seed should be of this depth of your finger at your second note of your index.
Ultimately, the planting fields should be cleared of any natural vegetation before planting. Take note of the difference here. In this field, one can clearly see the field on the left still has small bushes and weeds dominating, and those that need to be removed. So it looks like the one on the right is ready for planting.
Welcome back. And from soil preparation we actually go to horticulture. And we are here at Ferreira's Garden Center, where Maria Nel is going to help us understand a lot of what horticulture is about. Maria, welcome to Green Horizons.
Yes, good morning, Andres. It's a pleasure to join you on the program.
Maria, if somebody wants to start a small garden in their backyard, what general advice would you give them?
All right, there are of course a few challenges concerning a small space, but that can be overcome. I would advise to save space and use the space optimally. I would advise to have raised beds. Now you can easily do that by building boxes out of pallets, or you can go to Timber City, give them the measurements and they'll cut it for you. It's not that expensive. Then your soil preparation can also be more thorough, because that is very important. You want a combination between sand and clay. In other words, you want loam, and that is very important. Otherwise the uptake of nutrients and water will not be done efficiently. If you have soil that's clay, in other words that's too hard, that lacks organic matter, your roots are going to be water bound because it's holding the water too much. It's not, and then the roots can also not take up the water, and that will cause problems. And if your soil is too sandy, obviously then everything just drains away. The nutrients drain away, the water drains away too fast. So by adding ample organic matter like good compost, good quality compost, and or old kraal manure. One must just be careful with kraal manure because of the weeds and the tick eggs. And then we've got a wonderful product called cocoa peat. That is actually fantastic. Now, cocoa peat also helps to correct the pH of your soil, so that you have that ideal 6.5 to 7, not too alkaline, not too acidic. So then your plants will benefit from any nutrients you add to the soil. Otherwise, you'll be wasting your time and your money. So soil preparation is very important. And by using raised beds, boxes, or you can raise your beds slightly. Your soil should not be level, because then you're going to be inclined to waste water. So you must raise it from the side if you don't want to have boxes. So that way you can really make use of a small space effectively.
It seems you need a degree actually to start a garden in your backyard, but is it that difficult?
No, it is not that difficult. You know, today it is not like years ago. I remember my school days that we had to run to the library for everything and sit there for hours and do research. You know, everybody's got internet. You can get so much information on Google. And there's also very good books by Margaret Roberts. You can get them at Book Den. Just remember the name. She's the the herb guru. She was internationally renowned. She passed away about 3-4 years ago, but her daughter is carrying on. Those books are so good. You have all the information at your fingertips, and you can become an expert in your own backyard very quickly.
Maru, if you are preparing your soil, how long do you have to wait before you can actually start your garden?
You know, that is just a bit of an old wives' tale. You don't have to wait. You can work in your fertilizer, which if you use a granular fertilizer, you can use a granular fertilizer in raised or in big boxes. You can plant the same day because the fertilizers are all slow release, so there's no point in waiting. And then you should not use something with a very high nitrogen, because people will now, for instance, just grab 713. The symbols on the bag, that is the indication. Your first symbol is your N, that is your nitrogen. The second one is your phosphate, and the third one is your kalium or potassium. Now, nitrogen is for leaf growth, phosphate to stimulate strong roots, because the roots must take up all the nutrients and the water, and then your kalium is for fruit and flower growth. Now, if you use a nitrogen that's very high with vegetables, for instance, you're going to stimulate leaf growth, and that will be at the cost of the root that you mostly eat. You take the carrot is the root, the beetroot is the root, the onion is the root part, radishes, turnips. So if you use 713, for instance, with high nitrogen, you're going to get ample leaf growth, where that is not what you want. Whereas the nitrogen in 232 is high enough for something like spinach, where you want the leaf growth. So one must be aware of using the right fertilizer. And if you have, say, a pot garden, which you can also do in a small space, if you rather want to use pots, then I would not advise a granular fertilizer because it's very contained. That could easily have the wrong effect. Then we go for liquid fertilizers. Now, the advantage of a liquid fertilizer is that it doesn't have NPK only. That's your macro elements.
Yes.
It's also got the micro elements. In other words, the trace elements like iron, boron, zinc, magnesium, calcium, which is also necessary. So there I would say use and then also something like seed grow. One always underestimates the value of seed grow because it contains kelp. Now, kelp comes from seaweed, and kelp is a growth stimulant, and it also breaks down nitrates that might build up in the soil. Some places have hard water, or we've been advised to, actually we have not been advised to do it, but we all do it, to use our grey water, say from the washing machine rinse. A little bit of, most of the soaps and detergents are today biodegradable, but still a bit of nitrates might build up. So now and again you can use kelp as a fertilizer, which will help break down the nitrates.
So at least there's one good weed in that seaweed.
Yes. A weed is actually just a plant in an unwanted place.
Yes.
Poor things.
Yeah.
But we must never forget we have beneficial weeds as well, like kakibos, for instance.
Maria, we've talked about vegetables, but how about fruit trees? Do they really need a lot of water?
No, that is a common mistake that people make. Look, in the beginning when you plant a new tree, you might water it more frequently, say 2 to 3 times a week, just to get it going for the first 2 weeks so that the roots can establish. But after that you cut back to once a week. That is why your basin should be nice and deep, and don't try and make a bed smaller than at least 1 meter by 1 meter. And then it's always square, for the simple reason that the plant comes in a round container, a bag, or a round pot. Now the roots did this. So if you plant it in a round hole, again, the roots are going to do the same thing, and that will cause problems. Now with a square hole, you encourage the roots to go to the side. That is but once a week is ample instead of every day a little bit, because what happens is overwatering causes the hair roots to rot. And the hair roots do the essential work. They take everything through to the main arteries. So once you damage the hair roots, that causes problems. The problem with old trees, it can also happen that the hair roots harden, or like hair on one's head, they become old. It's got to be replaced, or a new growth must be encouraged, and that can be done by getting superphosphate into the soil, not as a top dressing. By making holes with the back of a broomstick, if the soil is nice and soft after watering, about 15 centimeters deep, fill it halfway with a superphosphate and close the holes. That will then encourage new hair roots.
So if somebody is looking to set up a garden, like a vegetable garden in his or her backyard, what cardinal advice would you give them?
Soil preparation is of optimal importance, really. If your soil is not prepared correctly, don't be stingy on investing in enough organic matter or asking about fertilizer. I'm surprised that many times people come with problems and I'll ask them, now, how did you plant it? Did you use compost? No, I just made a hole and I planted it. Nothing was used, not superphosphate to establish the roots, no organic matter. So what do you expect? Our soil, if we buy or if we have a piece of untilled or unworked soil, it is organic poor. There's no organic matter in it because of the symbiosis that took place but stopped eventually.
Marielle, thank you very much for joining us on Green Horizons.
It was a pleasure and thanks for having me.
When we come back, we are going to teach you how to actually go about testing the acidity of your soil. Don't go anywhere.
Before a farmer can start preparing his or her soil, there's an important element of soil testing that needs to happen first. Soil testing is a scientific process which is done in a laboratory. Now, luckily for many Namibian farmers and the general population, they are accorded this service at a mere 100 Namibia dollars. Soil testing is important because it helps in establishing how acidic the soil is, which ultimately leads to a decision as to what crop will be planted in the soil. Albertha Sipapo is one of the agri-lab technicians who spends most of her days in the laboratory in Windhoek. She takes us through what soil testing entails.
Our job as an analyst, a soil analyst, is when we receive samples from clients, basically there is a procedure to follow. You have to collect the sample the right way. If you collect the sample the wrong way, then that means also we will not get the right results. So the client must make sure that he collects the sample the right way. We do have a procedure how to collect the samples, the soil samples. And we can also assist the clients how to collect the samples. It should be around this size. Let's say 500 grams to 1 kg sample we need it. And it must be put it in a clean plastic bag, labeled correctly and in different depth. So the sample must, the client must label the sample of the different depth and all the information that we need, the plot number, for instance. And when we receive the samples, we bring the samples in this room. This is our preparation room and our reception.
According to Sipapo, the primary aim of most soil samples they receive is to test the pH level of the soil. Now, this means that the pH test can determine if the sample is acidic or alkaline. Soil pH is a measure of acidity and alkalinity in soils. Accordingly, pH levels range from 0 to 14, with 7 being neutral, below 7 being acidic, and above 7 alkaline. The best pH level that you would want is neutral, between 6 to 7. The pH is important because it influences the availability of essential nutrients. Most horticultural crops will grow satisfactorily in soils having a pH between 6 to slightly acidic and 7.5 slightly alkaline. To test the soil pH in the lab, the soil is weighed in 20 grams and then distilled water is added.
Then you put it in the sample. Now you are measuring now the sample, the pH of the sample. Let's read this sample. This is more mixture of soil and compost. Ne? You can even see the color. It's not a poor soil sample. It's not 100% soil. But
We just want to get the reading.
Yeah. So we have to wait until the instrument stops you, it's ready. Then the readings are stable and then it's ready. Nicely even the soil itself. But some of the soil is very fast. So that's why we have to let it stand for 1 hour so that everything will be recognized and mixture. Then you read it. But yeah, it's ready now, 7.37.
Another test done concerns the salt content in the soil. This is done by an EC, or electrical conductivity meter. The soil samples measured 1,774, and that is fine according to Zipapo.
You can put again the same sample, yeah.
Tilt it for us a little bit.
Then you can get the readings here.
Salts occur naturally within soils and water. So naturally, too little salt is bad and too much salt is also bad. Also, the amount of salt can be fine, provided that the crop envisaged to be planted can tolerate the amount. Japhet Mubusisi is another lab technician who explains what is termed micro and macro testing of the soil. The micro testing is also known as the NPK. The 3 numbers on fertilizer represent the value of the 3 macronutrients used by plants. These macronutrients are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, or NPK for short.
After the sample is weighed, right? Remember I said that we do wet chemical analysis here. So you need to extract those elements from that particular soil sample. Now the question is, how do you do the extraction? You need chemical reagents for that. So in the case of phosphorus, right, we use sodium bicarbonate to do the extraction. So afterwards, you'll be having a liquid. Now that liquid is the one that you're going to test. So I'll show you when we move on to the next room. Once you have the solution, now it's ready for analysis. So now in this regard, we are going to analyze for micronutrients, which is your calcium, your sodium, your potassium. So now in this case, what we do is, we have this instrument here that we call an ICP. It stands for inductively coupled plasma. So what happens is, you place your samples here. It has an automatic sampler, so you don't need to do it manually. So in this regard, the principle here is, it will extract the sample. The sample will run through these tubes, and then it will go in here, where there is a flame. Now you need to understand that your nutrients, they come in a certain form, right? So when they get in here, they have certain energy levels. So once they pass through the flame, depending on their energy levels, they are elevated depending on their energy levels. And once they're elevated, and then it passes through a light, which will give you the absorbance. Now obviously you will not be able to see the absorbance here as it is, so that's why we have the computer here. And there is a certain formula that we use to calculate the concentration of those micronutrients based on the absorbance that we got there. And that brings you to the end of the analysis here.
The macronutrients are measured using another ultraviolet ray machine, which then calculates the phosphorus concentrate. After all these tests, the laboratory personnel compile a comprehensive report, which normally the farmer takes to the agronomist to be able to determine what fertilizer to use and in what quantity.
Because mind you, see when you walk in here, your objective is for you to find out what your soil contains and how much of it contains. So at the end of everything that we do here, we give you a report that states what your soil contains and how much of it contains. So now it depends on you what you are going to do with that particular report. Because if there are certain crops that you'd like to plant, obviously there are some certain factors that you need to consider as well. So then in some cases you'll have to take that report and then maybe go to an agronomist or go to a specialist for fertilizer recommendations and so on. But like I said, the report that we give you, it states what your soil contains, how much of it contains, and then the structure of your soil.
This is the first step, because when you have this right, you will know what to plant and that particular crop will thrive in the soil that you have. That's all we had for you in this week's Expert Advice segment.
I hope you found that very informative and that it actually motivated you to create a produce-laden haven in your backyard. But now it's time for our diary section. Let's take a look. Welcome back, but now it's competition time. Last week's question was, when is the hunting season? Let's see who the winner was. Congratulations to the winner. You too can also win an NBC Internet TV box set. You can watch TV, listen to your favorite radio station, anywhere, anytime. All you have to do is answer this very easy question. If the reading of your soil, the pH reading of your soil is 9, is it alkaline or is it acidic? Let me repeat that. If the pH reading of your soil is 9, is your soil alkaline or acidic? SMS your answer to the number 62229. I repeat, 62229. That's all from me, Andries Meton, for this week. I'm looking forward to the next time. From me and the entire crew, goodbye.